Well, here we go again. A few weeks ago, it was the fishing industry that the UK caved in on. Now it is state aid and human rights. I've been saying this from the beginning. The UK is in a weaker position than the EU when it comes to negotiating. So of course they're going to bend as soon as they can see that they can't break the EU's resolve with threats or imaginary bargaining chips. Well, we have this news from Politico that the UK is now willing to write state aid principles into a final Brexit deal. This is serious movement. Britain's chief negotiator David Frost said on Wednesday the two sides were, and I quote, beginning a discussion that should see broad ambitions for subsidies to be put to the text of a deal. This is a sort of doublespeak. It is to give the impression to the public that the UK is still considering things, but behind closed doors they've probably already given in. Why is this significant? The UK until recently had been trying to hide any suggestion that they would discuss state aid rules with the EU behind the excuse of sovereignty, and that by somehow laying out its intentions on state rules, it would compromise that sovereignty, which makes zero sense. The EU's position was always, we need to see them before we can do a deal. Who compromised here? Well, I think it's quite clear. Now, Lord Frost attempted to backpedal a bit. When he spoke to the House of Lords European Union Committee, he insisted that the UK would not set out details, which seems to contradict what is actually happening. He told the Lords that both sides were discussing whether it would be possible to go further than a normal free trade agreement and agree some provisions that would shape and condition the subsidy policy on both sides. Basically, what he's saying here is, yes, we are working out an agreement with the EU on what state aid rules will look like. So this is just another climb down by Boris Johnson's government. He went on to admit to the House of Lords that Britain could benefit from a dispute resolution system. What the hell? This has been the complete opposite of the Brexiteer position since the beginning. The idea that there would be no agreement on an arbiter if that arbiter was not the British courts. On this issue, he said, and I quote, I can quite see us being ready to use them just as much as the EU in the future. He also said, other EU countries subsidize quite often more than we do, and that could definitely have an impact on us. This is just pure Brexit. Brexiteers saying, we have a red line that we're not going to cross, and then they go into negotiations, get blocked, the EU say no, they throw a tantrum, and then eventually give in. Now, another area where Boris Johnson seems to be bending is on the issue of human rights. The UK had been saying for a while now that they would not sign up to any agreement in this area with the EU, claiming that it was none of Europe's business. Now, some EU sources are now saying that a compromise is on the cards from the British side, as the UK government will not, and I quote, alter the spirit of the Human Rights Act. This is in order to achieve a trade and security deal with the EU. The European Convention on Human Rights is incorporated into British domestic legislation, and it's done so via the Human Rights Act. One particular Brexiteer, Jacob Rees-Mogg, is a major critic of this particular act. Now, a big problem is that Boris Johnson has set a deadline of the 15th of October to have completed these negotiations. While the UK seems to be bending in all directions to get a deal, there may not actually be enough time to agree on everything. Now, I have read somewhere that Boris may agree to something basic now and attempt to continue the negotiations on everything else after January, a sort of Brexit deal that papers over the cracks to convince people that he has achieved a victory. Remember that the EU will do whatever best suits them. If this means allowing Boris Johnson to claim a Pyrrhic victory while not actually surrendering anything to him, then they will do that. On almost every issue, I haven't really seen any compromise by the EU. Their position has been clear since the beginning, and the Brexiteers have gone from saying that the EU will bend to the EU are trying to break the UK by being obstructive. Well, Brexiteers, which is it? The European Council is expected to have a summit on the 15th of October, so it will be interesting to see if David Frost and Boris Johnson are able to pull something together for that date. I still believe that Boris will agree to something basic just to avoid some of the major chaos in January, not because he cares about Brexit, the British people or British industry, but because he's afraid that he will get blamed for the shambles. The UK position has always been play hard and then bend. Try to convince the public that you are winning concessions when you are actually handing them over. Since the beginning, the wrong people have been negotiating for the British side. People who had actual competences in their respective areas were sidelined for Brexit ideologues. And this is the result. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?